Welcome to Compass Global Markets weekly global markets update. I'm Tony Boyajian. We're going to start off with some data that came out recently. Fourth quarter US economic growth figures were released and they were revised up by 2.1%, and this was mainly due to higher consumer spending. Now, other data that's come out in the US as well, core personal consumption deflator as they call it, it's the Fed's preferred measure of inflation, that rose by 0.2%. And it's up around about 1.8% per annum as expected. Elsewhere, personal income figures for February also rose by 0.4%, and the ISM manufacturing data that came out was better than expected, above 57 points. Now, what that suggests is that the manufacturing sector is expanding quite well in the US. Now, some US Fed governors have expressed a cautious tone, saying that a couple of more rate hikes in the US is probable this year, but they don't seem to be in a rush, and they seem that there is a cause for them to pause as well, and they're in no hurry to do so following President Trump's inability to pass the healthcare bill and also the Fed's dovish outlook. Now, we've seen the US dollar edge a little bit higher as the market awaits Thursday night's FOMC minutes in the US and the March employment data, the all-important non-farm payrolls, out on Friday. Now, the Aussie dollar remains pressured on the downside after falling 1%. From last week's high. We saw it reach a high of 76.70. It's briefly been around the 75.90 level this morning. It's had another move higher after the Australian February trade surplus. The trade balance figures just came out, and the trade surplus for February was a whopping 3.6 billion, and the market expectations was around 1.9 billion. So that's a big number for the trade surplus for Australia, which has seen the Aussie dollar move back above 76 cents. Now, meanwhile, Australia's retail trade figures fell, mind you, only by 0.1% in February, but the attention seems to be on the property market. Dwelling approvals have risen by 8.3%, private sector apartments are up by 10.9%, and houses up by 5.3%. Sydney house prices in particular have risen by 18.9% per annum. And this is the strongest gain we've seen in 15 years. The median property price in Australia now is $805,000. The RBA is expected to leave their interest rates unchanged today at record lows of 1.5%, and it will reinforce perhaps their neutral monetary policy stance as well. Now, RBA Governor Philip Lowe will be speaking tonight at 7:15 p.m. in Sydney at a function. The market will focus on his comments because of his concern and caution to the property market, especially after APRA reduced the proportion of interest-only loans in Australia to 30% of total residential loans from the previous level of 40%. So we do not expect house prices really to fall in the Sydney and Melbourne markets where the property market is really hot until interest rates start to rise, and that looks like it's going to be at least 12 months away. Thanks to resurgent commodity prices, Australia's terms of trade are improving for the first time in many years, implying that incomes are also strengthening. And when we look at upcoming data, we expect the Australian dollar to trade in this 75-77 cent range for this week. Look elsewhere, the MSCI Emerging Market Stock Index is at a 2-year high, led by rallies we've seen in the Chinese, Korean and Indian markets. $30 billion has flowed into emerging market assets in March. It's the biggest inflow we've seen for 2 years. And just hot off the press, we've just had some news come out about Cyclone Debbie. Cyclone Debbie crossed the North Queensland border a few days ago and created widespread damage to Queensland, the Gold Coast and also to northern New South Wales area. According to the reports, the resultant floods have damaged vegetable and sugarcane crops, residential and commercial properties, farms as well, transportation, infrastructure, tourism facilities. But the big impact on the Australian economy could be delayed coal and beef production levels. Coal in particular could be affected by up to 0.5% of global exports that could be lost this year. Thank you for watching Compass Global Markets Foreign Exchange Update. I'm Tony Boyajian.